Yes, for me, let's start. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing really good. How about you, Antonio?
I'm really good. Thank you for hosting, guesting me, and I'm. It's very exciting to be here, and yeah.
No, we're glad to have you. It's good. We were glad that you had reached out a while ago. We had looked through your work. Obviously, you have a very strong background with configurators, which led to the idea of having this webinar and being able to go through some of the exciting things that are happening in tech, configurators, 3D, immersive technology. So we're glad to have you here. Um, why don't we do a quick intro? So if you don't mind introducing yourself, who you are, your company, and stuff like that, and then I'll do the same.
Yes, sure. So for who doesn't know me, like I'm Antonio, I'm founder of IDEX, and the mission of IDEX is to improve the shopping experience, especially for SMB e-commerce, and with 3D configurators and augmented reality experiences.
Yeah, great. And we've looked at some of your work, and that was part of the reason that prompted us to want to continue talking and learn more about you and what you're doing. So that was great to see. So I'll introduce myself for people who don't know. So my name's Adam Lukey. I'm the product owner here at Synode. My background is in industrial and mechanical design before we started switching into UX and more into the tech field. Always had a passion for 3D, obviously, SolidWorks, stuff like that. And then learning about augmented reality, mixed reality led me to move into the tech field and find Synode. And we've been working here for a while now. And the mission at Synode, our vision, is creating immersive 3D software that is interactive and being able to make the sharing of information easier from advanced manufacturers to their end users, considering things like training, considering things like configurators, which what we're talking about today, instructions, so post sale help, stuff like that. Um, and yeah, that would be a good summary for right now. Making that transfer of knowledge easier, and then making the actual creation of the 3D tools easier as well. So,
Yeah.
moving on. Today, obviously, the entire point of this webinar is to talk about configurators, specifically 3D configurators, the tech behind them, what makes a good configurator, and what do we see coming in the future. So, for example, I think when people picture configurators, they're thinking of just clicking through options. Usually, a lot of it is just a static image in 2D, doesn't really give people a lot of information. So the next wave of things that's becoming more and more popular now is the 3D interactive configurators, where you're able to have a 3D model based off of the real life CAD, which most advanced manufacturers have, and being able to use that to translate it to sales.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, 3D configurators are actually not so new, but because if we think about, like, for example, the most famous example is the Nike configurator, Nike by You, and it was released around 2018, I think. And yes, with the 3D now getting more easier also to create 3D models and transfer like CAD to 3D models for 3D configurators is getting easier. So 3D configurators are getting popular and popular, substituting also the 2D images that are not interactive and make just the user bounce from each page or close directly the tab of some e-commerce.
Yeah, of course, of course. I think the Nike is a very popular example. I think most people have at least taken a look at it. Most people are trying to buy shoes from there quite frequently. I think that's probably still the number one shoe brand in the world. But yeah, I guess you're right. The 3D tech has been around there for some of these bigger companies, for a longer time. But now, because the tech has evolved, it's much more accessible. So it's not just people like Nike who are able to have like a very nice, well thought out and high performance 3D configurator. Now you can be an independent contractor or even just somebody with a Shopify store and be able to have a 3D configurator on your website.
Yeah, yeah. Taking the Shopify, like for example, Shopify today allow you to implement 3D directly in the product pages. I mean, it's not a configurator itself, but it's a step towards 3D configurators and augmented reality.
Yeah, of course, of course. So, on that note, I think we can transition and start talking about some of the other examples of today's configurators. So, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Actually, before that, sorry. Um, other than we've just mentioned Shopify as a great example
Mhm.
for like a use case, but are there any other from your experience, because I know that this is your bread and butter is going through configurators, other than specifically just Shopify, do you have any other like practical use cases that you're seeing? So other, like, I know e-commerce obviously, but any specific products or platforms or specific industries that you're seeing the configurators do really well in, or that you're getting asked about a lot?
So, if we're talking about industry, I think sportswear and fashion in general. I mean, I'm getting more, more like inquiries from that industries that actually require a lot of personalization, especially if customers who want to personalize a bracelet, a bag, rings, all that kind of stuff. And I think furniture. Funny things is that people think that implementing 3D configurator is just an online thing that maybe you can sell more or reduce back and forth of email with the customers. But actually, when when I was to a jeweler, he was selling to me some rings with a 3D configurators. So
Mm.
like the configurators are not just used online, but also on offline, so you can show to the customers what would be the final product if I don't have that product right now with that customization in my shop in the moment. So I think that's very useful, interesting use case.
Yeah, no, that sounds like very specific example, especially in the jewelry use case. I don't think I've seen that specifically. We've talked about a couple of other clients that we've looked into where they want to have multiple different configurations set up and be able to use that internally to talk about how they were going to use it for engineering principles and what are the best ways to set things up like that. So slightly different, but it shows you that there's more use cases out there than specifically just like business to customer, right? So you can use those tools internally as well to boost production and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a very useful and very flexible, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of flexibility in the tech nowadays, so it's really good to see that we're growing in that space. So we've talked about a couple different use cases now. So what I'd like to do is look at a couple of different, I would say, top, most recognizable, or just configurators that I personally like or you personally like. So I have the example here, which you've already brought up now, which is the Nike configurator. So I'm a little bit biased because I'm a huge basketball and Nike fan. So here I have the Nike configurator. And so I've selected a pair of shoes here that I'm a fan of. And there's a lot of really good things about this configurator. And obviously, like you mentioned, since they had first come out with the 3D configurator, there's a ton of not only performance improvements, but UI improvements as well. So, one, the performance is just extremely smooth. You can't really get better than this. I know this isn't necessarily a super technical, heavy 3D CAD model, but this is extremely smooth. The fade on the transition when you let go of your mouse and kind of drag and let it slide is really nice. It's very well organized, as you can see on the bottom, especially for somebody who isn't necessarily tech savvy, only looking at one section at a time. So being able to click through, and it's pretty much like a wizard. So you select, you make a decision, you move on to the next one. It's very obvious for the user. You have the nice menu layout here with all of the components you can click on. The camera angles automatically change for it. And then additionally, you can just click on different aspects. The camera angle will change. It'll highlight the parts that you're going to be editing, which is really nice. So yeah, Nike has come a long way, and they definitely were one of the leaders in the space for this.
Yeah, that's very, I think it's very good example. And like, what are things that you would change or improve in this configurator, Adam?
One thing that I would definitely like to change is that unless you are specifically going through and you start using it frequently, like when I'm moving my mouse over the parts, I don't know that I can click on it. So it would be nice to see some sort of hover state interaction that I could click on. Another thing would maybe be information about the parts. I know that this is just a shoe and it's not as technical, but being able to click on a part and get additional information would be something that I would really like, which is another point that's going to come up later. Um, and then the only other thing, I guess, would be being able to see a little more, like the menu is pretty static here. Being able to have a menu that I can still interact with the model at the same time as having the menu open would be nice. Obviously, these are little nice to haves, but I think those would really improve the overall experience for the end user.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would improve here is to directly insert like a CTA to add to the cart the model that you've just done. Instead of like clicking done and then clicking add to the cart, that a further step that increase friction, the user will just not lose the focus and add to the cart the model and just purchase it.
Yeah, I agree. And being able to see pricing and stuff like that is extremely important.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point.
Yeah,
One of
because
the points. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Antonio.
I don't know about the pricing because of course you want to see if like every choice that you're making is changing the pricing or not.
Yes, it's nice to get the live feedback as a user. So that's one really important thing that I would like to see. One other thing that, especially that I've already mentioned here, which is the ability to click and receive extra information or stuff like that, making the product more interactive. In my next example, we have some of that. So here we have the um, Porsche configurator. So obviously you start and you have like your images here, which is nice just in terms of really quick, nice marketing shots. And then you have the option to open the 360 3D configurator view. So now we have the immersive 3D here. So one thing that obviously is really nice about this is the realism of it. Like this looks, you could pass this off as like a real image still shot. It's very well done. The environment makes it look really nice. It's very realistic, so the user gets a great idea of what their end product is going to look like. Could they have picked a better background without graffiti on the tubes? Maybe, but that was their decision. But one thing that I really like about this is that they have interactive elements to their configurator. So here, for example, I can animate and open up the hood and I can zoom in and I can see what's in the trunk space here. That's a really nice touch. So being able to have a 3D configurator to see the end product, but then also be able to interact with the product itself and have these tiny little hotspots and stuff like that where I can open up the doors, I can go take a look, see what it looks like on the inside, stuff like that, open up the gas panel. Like these are all nice to haves, but they really make the user feel more confident when they're making a purchase with the product.
Yeah, maybe they wanted to stimulate like more interaction with the user, especially because purchasing a car is very it's expensive, especially a
Yes.
model like Porsche.
Yes, yes, it's a significant investment. And one thing they did well is well here too is we mentioned the price and the add to cart. You see they calculate the monthly annual pay or the total pay,
Mhm.
and then you can see the different prices based on the configurations that you're going to be setting up for the different shades of paint. You have like a custom paint section here, which is really nice, and drop down the different rims, stuff like that. And what's also nice, which is again a nice to have, but it's and really subtle, is you can see the configurator slowly turning and giving that realism slow spin. It's a nice to have, but it gives the luxury feel for a user, and especially when you're a company like Porsche, that's a big thing to have.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Now, one thing I will say, one other thing I do really love about this is the switch to night mode. The actual environment completely changes. Again, a nice to have, but really cool feature. One thing I do notice is that when you look at the speed and performance comparing the two, the reaction time of this compared to this one, like this one is quite slow comparatively to the Nike. Obviously, this one is a much higher end rendering. It's a much larger model. You have a full environment, immersive environment, with like switching from night to day. You're animating the environment as well. So there's a lot more that needs to be generated and there's a lot more performance required. I have a very nice computer, so it's not as big a deal. But for somebody who's on a phone or a mobile or even just an older laptop, this might pose a problem. So that's something to be looking out for if you're interested in looking at configurators and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially when you have a lot of details like a car, you have to be very careful to optimize the 3D models. Like here you can change a lot of things in a car. So that of course it make it slower, but probably also here they could do some improvement to fix the speed, like when you rotate and zoom into the model, because that's like slowing down all the experience and make it like kind of more poor experience than actually luxury, which is Porsche.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And obviously Porsche wants to go all out. They have the money and they have their reputation to uphold, right? So this makes sense for them. But for somebody who's selling like a cup or like a small product, like configurable mugs or something small, like a daily item, something like this obviously isn't necessary. But for a big advanced manufacturer, this is a pretty nice configurator to have. It's a great setup.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And if you don't mind, I will share like some examples so that I think are relevant, that are a
Of
little bit
course.
maybe different. And I will share my screen.
Yep.
Okay. Could you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So we are here in the Polaris configurator, and this is like similar to Porsche because we are talking like car, and but we have different models here. And one thing that I like about this configurator and in general in the configurator is that you have a step. So you know exactly which point of the configuration you are at. And in the Polaris, before they show you the 3D model, I think this is done like to not slow down the user experience.
Hmm.
They actually make you select which model you want to edit first. So if I select one model, then there is a subcategory of that model, of course, and I'm going to choose a second one. So you can see here all the information, the specs, and all the things before you're going to edit. And once you choose, like they show you that is a 3D model, so they rotate and it's really nice. And a thing that I like here that like the Porsche, they show you the price per month for like the total price. And it's clear like okay, I have to go to the next step. So they show me only what I can change here. So it's like the outside or the exterior of the vehicle. And then if I go next, it will appear other options, which they will put me in a group option. So it's like more divided and more easy for users that are not tech savvy to understand. So here, everything that you will add will be like kind of 3D that is going to add to the 3D model.
Yeah.
And one thing that I like also that I didn't see in the Porsche configurator actually is like the interior functionalities. So
Hmm.
like, I can change the interior here, so I can even look from the inside how the interiors look. So for example, I think if I put the cab accessory, I could be able to see them. I don't see them. But anyway, yes, that's very nice. And then because this it's a high price, of course, you cannot like purchase online like you purchase a
Yep.
t-shirt. And yeah, you have the ability to directly in the configurator to email, print the configuration, capture the screenshot, and restart. So yeah, that's something that I really like. Then it's very smooth. I think it's in general it's easier to understand.
I agree. I think there's a lot of really good aspects about this one, especially the one aspect you mentioned, which is the getting the local price, which is going to be a very common trend among pretty much any manufacturer that goes through dealerships and stuff like that, like car dealerships or off-road, like fun vehicles, like recreational vehicle dealerships. They all go through dealerships that have slightly different price points. So giving an estimate of the price is really a nice feature. And then the option to go and actually talk to a dealership by clicking the get local price and getting more information is great as well. So you can find a dealership close to you.
Yes, yes, I agree. Another example that I had is the Remova. And in general, like also Polaris has this, but to not slowing down the product page, for example, something that a lot of brands do, I mean, maybe the best brand, like they use a customized button instead of putting the configurator directly in the product page. This is done to not slowing down the product page. So
Hmm.
then you can see all the information. And also here, the removal, make you choose the which model you want, and then go to the 3D configurator, so loading all the scene. And as every good configurators, you have the info points here, the interaction point. You can select the colors. In this case, the like for example, the colors of the label, and like you can even personalize the label. I like this. This is a
Hmm.
very cool animation.
I
And
really like that. That's a nice touch.
yeah, but I think for like brand that are just looking like to implement 3D configurators, this like, animation is just like nice to have things. It's not like
Yes, of
necessary.
course.
You know, it's like will surprise the user for sure, but it's not necessary. And so you will see the real personalization live, and it's like engraving, which
Yeah,
very very nice to.
that's definitely a luxury touch to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then then put the check marks, so what you didn't actually personalize, they will make you personalize before to proceed to the cart.
Hmm.
Summary, that's summary I think you don't find in every configuration, in every configurator. Especially maybe I don't want to say any, but like in the cheapest version, like they do not
Hmm.
give you a summary of the choice that you made. And So I think this is a really important step. And then the final call to action, add to cart, and you'll be able to purchase directly.
Yeah, I like the summary aspect. That was obviously another luxury, really nicely thought out configurator. So that was good to see. So anybody who's looking for configurators and wants those nice touches to make the user experience feel a little better, they can take notes from configurators like that really are going the extra mile.
Yeah, I mean, these are like the most the example that are okay, we show some like luxury brand where they have like more budget. So when you have more budget, it's easier to implement like all the functionalities that you want.
Hmm.
But I think also we have to really understand what are the functionalities that the product need and that will drive the sale between the functionality that actually are nice to have and it's unuseful to spend budget on
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's the cost versus value debate for that. Like you can spend tons of time adding in really nice, cool features, but what actually works? Like what's going to actually convert sales, what's actually going to be remembered by users and effectively get them to want to buy your product and then give your product a good impression. So what would you say, like you've obviously been building configurators for a while, what would you say are the most common things that either you really want to include in a configurator for a customer, or what's the most requested thing from a customer?
So I think I have few points here that I already talked about when we show the configurators. And the first one is to load the configurator in a second page or open a model. So like Nike does, for example, that it show you like customize, and then it opens like a model where you have the configurators. So
Yeah.
it doesn't load the configurator directly in the page because I see a lot of e-commerce founders or e-commerce manager complain about the loading speed, the paging speed. And yes, that's the first thing. Second thing, price in the configurator, so you know how much it will cost with a clear call to action. So add to cart or proceed to the checkout and the step-by-step configuration. I
Mm.
think it's more clear with that without you scrolling through the list. I think like in the case of Porsche, I would improve that.
Yes, yes. So that's kind of you have a cost effective tip, you have a UX tip, which is make sure you're following a sequence, and then a performance tip, which is opening in
Yeah.
a separate area so that you're not compromising the performance on the page that the user navigated to it from.
Yeah, I think for me that's are the most important. Then like all the rest is like let's say it's less, yes, it's less important, but these are things that for me should have a configurator should have.
Yeah, makes sense. No, those are great tips. So on that, so we've talked about what's current, the practical advice and stuff like that for a couple of small tips based on what we've looked at for the popular configurators that we've seen, the Nike, Porsche, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're going to talk about the future trends. So obviously we're in an era where tech is booming. There's tons of stuff that's exploding all of the time. There's a new trend every single day. Regarding 3D and where we see that fitting in with configurators, one of the biggest ones obviously is augmented reality. So I know that you have some experience with augmented reality. We've developed some augmented reality stuff ourselves as well. Where do you see that in terms of configurators? Obviously, furniture for me is the one that comes to mind immediately. But I would be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I believe, yeah, augmented reality configurator would be kind of a next step. Especially I think for cars that would be very useful.
Mhm.
Like imagine you're like you have big space, you have a garden, like whatever, and all through your phone or in the future through smart glasses, you'll be able to change the some accessories in the car, the colors, and you would directly, see yourself like in front of you instead
Mhm,
of on a computer screen, and maybe also the color would be more, um, more defined, if we can say it like that.
mhm. It feels more real, it feels more
Yeah,
immersive,
yeah,
which
more real. That
yeah,
yes.
so the user is more likely when things are tangible, when you can actually touch something, it makes the user more likely to really actually want that product because it feels like, okay, now I can really get a good feel for it, I can see it, and now they want it, right? Whereas if it's something online, it's a couple of blurry images, obviously there's no confidence in that purchase. So generating the confidence through augmented reality and getting the user to get a real feel at scale as well really helps with that. Like in the furniture example, that's another good one, which is how is it going to look for me? So if I'm buying a couch because I hate my couch, I'm going to replace it. How is that couch going to look in my space, personal to me? So being able to put it in augmented reality and then seeing how it's going to look in my living room or in my office, whatever, is going to give me that confidence like, okay, this is a good purchase and I'm going to be able to go forward with that.
Yeah, and I think also, because a good transition to that would be, make the user, the buyer, choose if they want to configure, like, for example, an augmented reality and or on a screen, you know,
Mm-hmm,
especially if they're from mobile, because from mobile you have. You don't have a complete view of the configurator of the model and maybe not all the functionalities, and you could have that with in augmented reality with interactive buttons. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and another one too is not even just for the end user specifically, but if you picture this is an example that I've used multiple times, but picture you're a car salesman. Maybe it's Porsche too, but instead
Mhm.
of doing it on the screen, there's another technology. So augmented reality is great as well, and it would work with this too. But what we've been experimenting with here at Synode is mixed reality, which is where you're able to take your 3D model and whatever animation or configurations that you've associated with it, and then map it over top of the real product so that you have the real product in real time and full scale. And then you can apply changes to it with your smart glasses or your iPad or phone, whatever, and see the changes based on the configurations you're selecting in real time. So if you're in this, putting yourself in the shoes of like a car salesman, and you have a client walk in, they want to buy a car, and you only have the car in black on the lot, and it has silver rims, but the user or the customer comes in, they say, "Well, I love that car, but I want to see it with a spoiler and chrome rims, and I want it in red." Instead of looking at pictures online or something, you can do that on a configurator in augmented reality or in mixed reality and show them directly the scale, how it's going to look. And you can customize the car directly in front of them. And they really, again, it's about getting that confidence in the product you're about to buy. And that's going to result in a much stronger likelihood the user is going to buy it and you're going to make that sale.
Yeah, I always tell my clients like better, like more engagement you have and more time the user are spending time with you, and this will increase their trust, so it's more likely they're going to purchase your product instead of that of a competitor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that those are two really great examples of tech. Obviously, there's the virtual reality as well. There's virtual reality try-ons and stuff like that. I know Snapchat, even that's probably the biggest use case for AR in the world right now because people use it every day. The different filters and stuff like that. You can try on a hat, you can put on shoes. There's a ton of different use cases. So another I won't call it a trend because it's here, but AI obviously is another extremely popular thing right now. So have you seen any use cases where AI, or do you see in the future, I should say, where AI has an impact on configurators, or if there's anything along those lines where you can see that playing a part?
I think AI, at the moment, I didn't see any good example, but AI would be very useful in configurators where you have a lot of option actually.
Mhm.
When you have few options like switching some colors, two steps, that become a little bit unuseful because maybe the time that you spend to talk or type to AI and the type to get the reply and generating the 3D well, it's longer than like the type that I click two buttons and I see my
Yes.
configuration. But yes, for example, in a car configurator, that would be much more useful to have like, okay, I want the car like this with this wheel, this color, and then it will generate directly the 3D model, or maybe even suggest you some upsell and it
Mhm.
would show you with some with that upsell and it would be great. I i think this is will be probably the next step in the configurator space. Like I think in the next years we'll see more configurator that integrates AI to let
Mhm.
customers configure the product itself and then like transition that to the smart glasses. I
Yeah,
can.
I agree. And I think another one regarding cost as well is using the AI. Maybe you have a certain budget. So if you're prompting and you're able to talk to the AI configurator and say, "This is my budget. Can you show me all the configurations that are possible within my budget constraints?" and be able to see things like that. And then it can weigh the options for you and provide some insight into your decisions.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, these are the most, I think, the future trend for configurators, augmented reality, and AI. I wouldn't see any other. Mm, no.
Yeah, maybe another one I could see would be like data-driven personalization based on something that you've been using consistently. But usually the configurators are kind of a one-time deal, so I'm not sure how we eventually could make that work for business to client to customer. But in terms of like an internal organization, being able to use that data to improve processes and stuff like that with using the configurators, kind of like I mentioned previously, I could see that. Um, but I think there's a lot of room to explore in that field with the AI.
Yes, if we're speaking about analytics, like maybe the most used, most selected items, you would have the possibility to get more inventory of that or increase the price on that item and remove all the other that cost you
Mhm.
space.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. There's a lot of different opportunities, and obviously we don't have all the time in the world today, but there's a lot of things that we could be going on and on about. One last question regarding that. Um, So how far do you think we are about like fully immersive configurators, like going into VR and stuff like that? So I know they're probably a thing already, but do you think that we're in terms of the software versus the hardware that we're too far away? So you mentioned the smart glasses previously. Obviously, not everybody has those. And not everyone has like the Apple Vision Pro. So do you see VR configurators coming anytime soon, or do you think the hardware still has to catch up?
No, I think the hardware still to catch up. There is a lot of improvement that like companies have to do with that, and I don't think people will use VR. It's I think the next step it would be more like augmented reality, configurator in augmented
Mhm.
reality. I see that more near than like configurator on smart glasses because there is still not this mass consumption.
Yeah.
And yeah, I believe so. And um,
So basically, once the hardware catches up, then it's more realistic, essentially.
yeah, at the moment, also the part of the configurator, I saw a lot of brand like passing through configurator built through software are building their custom configurators.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like when you um, when you do build when you build a custom configurators, it's also difficult to update it with the when tech advance. Like you build a configurator today, and tomorrow you have to update it because maybe there are these new smart glasses, and you have to adapt the software. Of course, everything has its pro and cons. So
Yeah.
now that from one side it's convenient, probably more than uh, paying a software for years, but the software you have kind of guaranteed that it will be updated and all the stuff.
Yeah, of course. That's kind of expected. Tech is moving so fast that you kind of have to be prepared for constant change. But I think everybody's aware of that at this point. But it's good to keep in mind. So obviously these trends are all exciting. Obviously, we talked about the potential with AR and VR and mixed reality, et cetera, et cetera. But if we were to talk about right now and get more practical, so let's if we could talk about providing tips or practical advice for creators and brands, like maybe not the Nikes of the world, but somebody who's got their Shopify store and wants to create a configurator, or a furniture company who wants to create a configurator for their clients. Where would you start with a configurator project? What is the things that you would want to start with as a baseline?
So I would start with 3D models and optimizing all the 3D models, especially not just the 3D models like polygons, geometry, but also the materials, the textures,
Mhm.
and
Like a 4K PNG is going to immediately slow down that performance, right? As opposed to like a
yeah,
gigabyte megabytes or something like that.
yes, that's like you have to, because for example, devices like iPhone limit the usage of RAM,
Hmm.
and so it will like basically close the experience or reload the page, and you don't want that when customers are purchasing.
Yes.
So that's the first thing, and then being very clear with the user experience.
Hmm.
If user doesn't know where to click, for example, they're going to open your configurator, but then they are going to leave the page.
Right, right. So in terms of the tech stack, what kind of tech are you using right now, and what would you recommend? What have you experimented with? What works well? What works is not so great? How have you fared with that?
So at the first, when I started in 2022, I was using softwares to build configurators for my clients, like other third-party softwares. Now, recently, also because I have my own configurator template, so like you download and you apply. I built that on Play Canvas because it's highly reliable and it's fast. But I'm also shifting to 3JS,
Hmm.
which is very popular as a big community. So you can develop the configurator from that, and then I used to host the models on Cloudflare because they have different server around the world. So it's easier. Like if the user like it's from the other part of the world where I have my company, then Cloudflare for sure can reach that person.
Mhm.
And yeah, this is the most, I think.
Yeah, very good, very good. These are things that we're kind of considering right now as we have our current configurator that's live, and we aim to be making our V2 configurator self-service. And these are the kind of things we're considering at the moment: is the different kind of tech we want to be using, what's the most scalable, what's going to make sure that we don't have to make any giant changes. But at the same time, we're going to be wanting to support as many devices as possible, keeping in mind the performance and stuff like that. The one thing that you mentioned, which is, I think, important anytime you're considering web, 3D on the web, is optimizing your files. I'm glad you touched on that because that is the most important thing that I've seen everywhere. We've had seemingly small products that can
Mhm.
blow up a web page because they're not optimized. And then we've had full vehicles that are optimized and they work really well and they work really seamlessly. So the optimization of the polygon count and then the images is probably one of the biggest implications on performance. So I'm glad that we brought that up.
Yes, because it happened that clients asked to me like, I want the 3D model to be very detailed,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but something that you have to make to understand the e-commerce or like any other industry that want to implement a 3D configurator is that is going to kill the experience of the configurator and the user. So it's
Mm-hmm.
better a user that stay on the page, configure a product and purchase than a user that leave because it took too much to load the configurator.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Like if your model can be as nice as you want, but if the user doesn't enjoy the experience, they don't care what the model looks like at the end of the day. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. So we're running out of time here. So just our last little segment here, which is a quick little rapid fire to wrap it up. So configurators by 2030. What would you say in one or two words would be a good way to describe that?
Mm, I believe augmented reality.
So you
Yeah.
think that's where it's really going to take off in the next couple of years is augmented reality bringing things to life?
Yeah. Imagine, for example, you want to purchase a jersey,
Mhm.
okay? And you can still like, I imagine, like, put yourself in augmented reality in front of the mirror and
And
see
have
how
your
it is
jersey
with
on.
jersey.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That
very
would
nice.
be awesome.
So augmented reality or mixed reality, which will matter more in terms of the next coming years. So it sounds like when you said that, it sounds like you're kind of grouping those together, like augmented reality and mixed reality. So you think both of those techs are going to have a huge impact on configurators in the next coming years.
Yes, I believe more like, I'm talking more about augmented reality
Mhm.
because if I talk with mixed reality, maybe people do not understand. It's already difficult for them to understand augmented reality.
Fair
But,
enough. Fair enough.
you know, at the end, this technology will be like one.
Yes.
I think it will not be distinction. Already, Apple did so with defining spatial computing,
Mhm.
instead of augmented reality,
Yes.
virtual
Yes.
reality, and so on. So,
Good. Good. And last question. So, what's your favorite real world example of immersive tech? So, do you have any examples? Doesn't have to be a configurator, whatever you can think of. What's your favorite example?
I don't have a favorite example. Um, if I think of like, I really would like to get, the smart glasses
Hmm.
and and do things like with that most of the time. For example, cooking,
Yeah.
and like showing up maybe how you can do something on the receipt, or the most n- nice things I think are games.
Yeah,
Games
yeah.
in virtual reality, and that totally another experience.
Yeah, I've recently tried some of the virtual reality simulators. There's an F1 virtual reality simulator that's near me in Kitchener, and it's insane. You really feel like you're in the car. So that technology is insane. So I love that.
Yeah, I think game is the most.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a obviously a huge field for creativity there with this new tech that's coming out. So that's great. Yeah, so that's all we have for today right now. So one, Antonio, I'd love to say thank you very much for joining. You brought a lot of great insights today. So it was great for you to be able to take the time and we could have this chat together.
Thanks you, and it was a pleasure for me to be part of the webinar. And yeah, I hope like also who also this webinar enjoy it, understand more, like got some insight from what we talk about, and yeah.
Awesome. Great. Any of the links and resources? So that was the Nike configurator, the Porsche Macan configurator, and then you had two as well. Which ones were which you had brought up as examples
Uh,
there?
Polaris and removal configurators.
Polaris and Removin. Very nice. Um, and then just another note is our next webinar topic is most likely going to be about manufacturing and going from SolidWorks to Synode and being able to bridge the gap between native apps and web-based 3D. So that's going to be a topic with one of our potential clients that's coming up. And then, yeah, that's all we have. So I would like to open up the floor to for questions if there's anybody that's watching right now that would care to ask. So we'll give them a bit of time to ask some questions there as well.
Yeah, and meanwhile, that if some question will arrive, I want also to say that I have a YouTube channel, and like there are some information about how to develop some 3D configurators, the benefits, the cost. So you can to check on YouTube Antonio Furioso, and it will show up for like you can see the videos are there. I mean, I'm not active this month, but there are I think some videos pretty uh, that go over time.
Yeah, great, great. So one question that we have here is how can AI help bridge the gap between engineering data and product configurations? So I'm not sure if you have any insight on this, Antonio, but I have a brief answer I can give, which is being able to do the connection between engineering data and product configurations. So linking things to like a PDM or a vault, um, which is where the advanced like most advanced manufacturers are going to be storing all of their engineering data, their parts, their part files, numbers, and stuff like that, and then the history of the parts. So like things like damages or imperfections in the parts during manufacturing processes and things that are going to be tracked as part of these like digital product passports or anything for keeping track of the history of these parts can be brought and connected with product configurations so that people can order specific parts based on repairs. So if they're ordering a bunch of parts for repairs or replacements for parts, that information the AI can use and send the information back to the PDM, and we can make that connection so that there is information going from the end user to back to the manufacturer. Um, so that would be one thing that I would like to add to that. But Antonio, if you have any other insights, please feel free.
About engineering, I unfortunately don't have many example. So I think like your answer is what is the best that they could get.
All right, perfect, great. We have one other question, which is which XR headsets do you think are the most promising or important to watch, especially for virtual commerce?
So I think I wouldn't talk about headsets because I do not see that as much of mass consumption and like trend for it
Mhm.
because it's more like kind of, let's say, nerdy things, you
Right.
know, like
It's like people who are more fans of the tech as opposed to the real use cases in your mind.
yes, developments. So like, for example, the Vision Pro is like it's not for consumption; it's more for developers. And what I would like keep an eye on are the smart glasses, especially on Meta Orion, which is different from the Ray-Ban, and the spectacles of Snapchat. That I know this year they will release um, the version for consumers.
Gotcha. Very nice. Very nice. I know that Snapchat have been working on releasing that for a long time, so it seems like they're finally ready to compete with Meta and the Ray-Bans and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the technology, we are at the point where they can do it. I think it's pretty solid the technology today, so I believe so.
Yeah, hopefully that they waited this long because they have a product that they've ironed out all of the issues and they can finally release something that's going to be maybe not bug free, but significantly less problematic for users.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like we're getting any more questions at the moment, so we'll maybe give it another minute or so. But other than that, I think we're good to wrap up here. So once again, it was great to meet with you, Antonio, and hopefully we can talk again soon in the future.
Yes, yes, I appreciate the time and I really enjoyed the webinar and talking about augmented reality, 3D configurators, the tech in the future, the trends. Thank you very much, Adam.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for joining. And one last note is we're going to have a recording of this meeting, this webinar, and we're going to be posting this on YouTube for people to be able to review and watch at a later time.
Yes, fantastic.
All right. It was great talking to you, Antonio. Hope you have a great night over there.
You too. Bye bye and bye bye, everyone.
Yeah, cheers.